Hello, everyone. My name is Shakiba Shayani, President and CEO of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, and I will be the moderator for today. As the leading voice of business, the Guelph Chamber is pleased to be hosting this municipal election question and answer session. Thank you to the candidates for joining us today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that Guelph is on treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the New Credit Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples. During our region's rich Indigenous history, these lands have been home to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Métis. We express gratitude for the sharing of these lands, and we also acknowledge the tragic history between Indigenous peoples and settlers. Indigenous peoples governed themselves for thousands of years before settlers arrived in Canada. Each First Nation, for example, had its own ways of making decisions based on its community's needs and values. Many of these distinct ways of governance continue today, and the lessons of community needs-based governance are principles we could all greatly benefit from. At the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, we continue to play an important role in bringing together business and community leaders to advocate to all levels of government for policies and leadership that enhances the social and economic prosperity of our city, including through discussions like this one. So, I would now like to introduce the participating candidates. When I call your name, please tell us about yourself and why you believe you are the best candidate for Mayor of Guelph. Danny Drew, we begin with you.
All right, I'm Danny Drew. I've lived in Guelph since 2009. I came here for university, mechanical engineering. Yeah, I suppose I'll just go right into my intro then. I'm running as mayor of Guelph to ensure workers have a seat at the table in places like this, to flip on their head, to put the needs of the people ahead of that, to flip things on their head and put the needs of the people ahead of the wants of those who sit on hordes of stolen wealth, to make a more just society and to ease the grinding anxiety felt by most of us who are just one step away from total poverty, and to pull up those who have already fallen. Guelph's once flourishing communities, not just downtown, but across the city, are slowly being crushed under a rising tide of gentrification. Our vibrant culture withering under the shade of countless identical cannabis stores and unaffordable restaurants, while what money we do have is siphoned off to subsidized suburbs, sprawling into what used to be forests and farmland, making more people dependent on cars while the price of gas skyrockets and the world heats up. Things can be better than this. Most of us want something better than this. As mayor, I intend to make growth pay for growth, to increase transparency and efficiency, such that the money freed up from foolish spending can go towards improving life for everyone. Together, we can rebuild the city into a thriving place with wealth enough for everybody. And keep in mind, entrepreneurs, less poverty means there's more money to be spent on your businesses.
Thank you, Danny. Next, Cam Guthrie.
Hi, thanks, Shakiba, and thank you, Danny, too, for putting your name forward and having this conversation today. Really appreciate it. A little bit about me, maybe some people do know some, but maybe some are new to the city. So as I said, my name's Cam Guthrie. My family's been here since 1919, and so a very long time. And I absolutely adore this city. I love trying to help everybody as much as I can every single day. And, I just really appreciate the trust that you've given me these past 8 years as your mayor. My focus has been on the job at hand, balancing both the day-to-day work that needs to get done, but also ensuring that we're looking to the next generations ahead of us and making sure that the city is representative for them as well, as we try to make things more affordable and safe and sustainable as we move forward. It's been my honor to serve you as the mayor, as I said, for the last 2 terms. And I'm looking forward to, with your vote, of course, to continue to do that after October the 24th. A little bit more about me is that I have been elected as the Ontario Big City Mayor's Chair for the last few years. And that represents 70% of the population of Ontario, fighting for things that all big cities are trying to work on across the entire province. And so collectively, our voice has been heard. It's helped the province, but also helped Guelph. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And we'll jump into the first question. So in the role of mayor, there's a lot of pressure to meet everybody's needs and wants, but not everything can get done all at once without exacerbating the affordability crisis onto people. What do you want to prioritize, and how will you do so? Cam, we start with you.
Great, thank you. Well, you're right to acknowledge right off the top that we are in an affordability crisis. So I really believe that what we need to do is we need to make sure that we look at the pace of projects that are happening within the city, making sure that we're maintaining our legislative duties, looking at risk to the municipality and to others to make sure that that's being taken care of. But then other issues, we should look at it through a lens of affordability to see whether or not they may need to be paused, they need to be stopped, or they may need just to be pushed off into the future a little bit more. Of course, it's also important though that if we do look to pause, stop, or push over into the future, that the affordability now may turn into being unaffordable later. And I will not put the community at risk if something like that was to be presented as an option for us. Because again, as I said in my opening remarks, it's the future generations that we need to look through. The other thing about affordability is it's not always about trying to raise taxes. There is ways that we can look internally, doing service reviews, which I've started the last several years, which has saved the city millions of dollars. We can also look at actually getting new revenue that isn't from property tax. So if you, as an example, we looked at our Guelph Hydro a few years ago. It's now with Electra, and that's producing more revenue for the city. We also have the railroad, the Guelph Junction Railroad that we own as a municipality. That has also started to actually reap some financial benefits for the community too. And so those are the types of things I want to continue to look at to make sure that we are making it an affordable city for all, not just now, but also for the future.
Thanks, Cam. Danny, what will you do to prioritize what needs to get done and the pressures of the diverse needs that'll be before us in the coming term?
First off, I'd like to address the matter of quasi-privatizing a service such as hydro. The increased revenue is largely drawn from jacked up rates that are becoming quickly unaffordable to most people. But that aside, I intend to address, well, the thing is we don't need to take these, it's not a one thing or another question. Like, for example, the library project, like a lot of people believe this is an unaffordable project right now or ever, depending on who you ask. But it's actually the library, though it is a bit of a cost right off the bat. We are having a lot of it funded, mind you, but it will yield approximately, well, we can see other places in the country where similar projects have yielded between $5 and $9 return on every dollar spent. That's one way we just basically don't have to worry about affordability in that regard. In terms of the everyday person, I intend to instate a vacancy tax of 30% minimum. We have a vacant housing epidemic in Guelph. There are 30 of them at least 30 of them that I've found so far within a kilometer of me. We don't necessarily need to waste more taxpayer money on paying developers to build more housing. We can just tax people who are hoarding it, get more revenue, or free up housing. In that way, we can, well, that ought to reduce rents, or at least in these places that are being hoarded at the moment, making it so people can actually afford to live. As it stands, most people can't afford the average rent in Guelph. For example, I'm stuck where I am because anywhere else is unaffordable. You can't get cheaper rents than, what was it like? I think I found $1,300 for a tiny little one room. Anyway, that's besides the point. Main thing, vacancy tax right off the bat. Stop all the housing hoarding, reduce the cost of shelter. That'll do.
Thank you. The next question, Danny, we'll start with you. An effective mayor is someone with strong leadership qualities. What makes a good leader in your opinion? And which of these traits do you possess that makes you the right person for the role? Danny?
The leadership is it is a privilege and a responsibility, not a matter of status. To be a good leader, one must not be too far ahead of the people, but they also must not tail them. They shouldn't just be subject to the whim of every single, say, constituent, an example of a representative electorate or democracy like ours. You have to speak with the people, be of the people, see what their needs are, and then synthesize this into appropriate policy to have these needs met. And then via this analysis, you can show the people how they can move forwards to meet their own goals. It's not a matter of trying to drag people into the future, and it's not a matter of trying to push people from behind. well, that one basically just they have to listen, but not just listen. They have to listen and analyze, and have, I guess, have the tenacity and courage to enact the policies that they have determined are appropriate from speaking with people. I guess I could address what qualities I have this. Well, what could I say? I believe I do have these qualities. I believe that I'm out there every day, like speaking with people on the street whose needs aren't met, like feeding them, like helping give them supplies that they need, helping them out in other ways. I'm there connected to people who they know what they need, but there is no way out for them. And I'm in a position where I can listen and maybe do something about it. I think that'll cover things sufficiently.
Thank you, Danny.
Mm-hmm.
Cam, what makes a good leader in your opinion, and which of these traits do you think you possess?
I think it starts with listening. That's the big one for me. When we look to make decisions at City Hall, I try to always look at it through sort of 3 different categories. So you have obviously the engagement with the citizens, then you have your advice from professional staff, and then you also listen to your council colleagues too. And those 3 inputs before a decision is made is really important. And so that's a big thing, is listening to all 3 of those before I make any kind of decision. The other thing that I think is really important about being a leader is about relationships. And so foundational to me is making sure that relationships are either restored and are being renewed or being cultivated. And, I look to, as an example, the County of Wellington, where several years ago, the city and the County of Wellington was not even speaking to each other. And although there's a lot of interaction on the services side of things, there was nothing really happening from the relationship side. And, I'm proud to be able to say that I reached across to say, let's restore that relationship. And since that's happened, we won the Smart Cities contest for Canada together, winning $10 million for our food economy here locally, for the local food circular economy. The social services, when it comes to homelessness and other issues around helping people in poverty, has really collaborated very, very well. When you have a solid relationship, when you can have that ability to work together, no matter what level of government it is, or a stakeholder in the community, such as yourselves as the chamber or the university or other businesses, it just makes things go a lot better. And so I feel that my engagement, my listening, my collaboration is all aspects of what a leader and a mayor should be for a city.
Thank you. So speaking of relationships, we're going to dig into this a little bit deeper, and we'll start with you, Cam. How will you foster an effective and constructive relationship among not only councillors, but also between councillors and city staff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the things that's important is to actually recognize that currently council and staff, I believe, do have a very good relationship. There is always some important divide, if I could say, between administration and with the elected officials, because that is good governance. However, I think it is important to make sure that especially we are going to have a minimum of 4 new councillors coming on stream in the election, because 4 long-term councillors have indicated they're not running again. So that I think that leadership that I can have here as the mayor, who's already been there, is going to help new councillors to come in. We have to remember that after an election, we are done with electioneering and we are a team. No longer is it vote for me, or I. It's about a team, and we get things done for the city a lot better when we come together as a team. So that's council, myself as the mayor, the executive team, and all other staff. And I think at the end of the day, the citizens will benefit from that type of an outlook, that type of leadership, and the type of collaboration, as I said in my previous answer, that they're looking for.
Thank you. Danny, how would you foster an effective and constructive relationship among councillors and between councillors and city staff?
I can't exactly speak on the matter between councillors and city staff, I don't believe. I just simply don't have the experience in that regard. But as regards good teamwork and, well, relationships between councillors, first off, I would definitively oppose the strong mayor initiative such that we're actually a team and not a a dictatorship almost. But beyond that, well, I have a lot of experience working in organizations where, listen, to have a good working relationship, a lot of people believe you also have to like one another. This is something that I've found actually causes organizations to become dysfunctional. One is able to develop good working relationships with people as long as goals are made clear, as long as our shared goals are made very clear to one another. People can have personal disagreements with one another as long as it's, kept out of their job, as long as it doesn't affect their ability to get things done, to enact good policy for the people. So in that regard, I suppose I would just were I the mayor, I would like to make that clear that none of us have to like one another. And I mean, it's a benefit if we do, but it should be clear that we are working together for a purpose. We have a task, we have a purpose, we have a mandate to make lives better for the people, and that we have to do this regardless of our feelings of the matter. All right,
Thank you.
That
So it's also important, as you both know, to forge productive relationships with the province. How would you strengthen the relationship between our municipality and the province of Ontario? Danny, we'll start with you.
Between the province and Guelph. That is a great question. Well, I would obviously be interacting with them to some degree, but the trouble is the provincial government as it stands acts in no way for the people. So I would not necessarily be, I would not want to necessarily have a good relationship with them. I would have long, intensive conversations with everyone I could at the provincial level to try to change their ways such that they would stop hurting the ordinary person economically and, well, culturally as well, actually. Yeah, so in that regard, I don't believe it's important to maintain a good relationship with these people necessarily when they don't have our interests in mind. My main thing, I suppose, I guess, to repeat is I would argue with them to the best of my ability to try to change their minds, try to change the way that they govern, the way that they enact policy. Because as it stands, it's not sustainable and it's not doing anyone any good. I don't think that we should work together with people who are effectively our enemies.
Thank you. Cam, how would you strengthen the relationship between the municipality and the province?
Thank you. Well, it is important, actually, as I said in a previous answer about relationships, you get stuff done when you have some good relationships. And however, I have a track record of critiquing where critique is necessary and praising where praise is necessary. So I think that balanced approach is important. I would actually indicate that because of some of the relationships that I have been able to create with the province as the mayor, we have seen actually benefit trickle down to the city of Guelph. And that's not saying that with Premier Ford, by the way. I'm also saying that with Premier Wynne, because I've been the mayor under both of their appointments. So it is very important. As I indicated, I'm the chair of the Ontario Big City Mayors Caucus, where I'm interacting with provincial ministers and the premier often. And I'm also, by default, on the Association of Municipalities of Ontario board. And we, as a lobbying group, take these common issues to the province and work collaboratively with them so that they can understand the impacts of their decisions and their policies that are being made and how it actually impacts our municipalities, and specifically, of course, Guelph. So if it comes from a job perspective, a climate change perspective, transportation, any type of economic growth, you name it, safety of the community, that interactions with all the ministers with the province is important to maintain, because again, we can get stuff done for the community when need be.
Thank you. So in December of 2021, City Council approved the city's first multi-year budget. This resulted in a 4.2% levy increase in 2022 and an anticipated 5.1% increase in 2023. At budget review time in just a few short months, what do you hope to achieve? What will you be looking for? Cam, we start with you.
Thank you. Well, I did not vote for that collective budget because I felt that it was unaffordable. In the middle of a pandemic, to actually look to pass an almost 10% budget increase, I felt was not the right move for City Council to make at that time. Although the budget did pass, you rightly did indicate that there is an opportunity to come up to take another look at it. However, it's called a confirmation vote, and I don't actually subscribe to that. It lends itself to think that we're just there to rubber stamp it. So one of the things that I'm promising to do if reelected, and if I have council support, is to actually take a deep dive to reopen the budget properly and have a better process before any type of confirmation of a budget is put in place for 2023. We are in a financial crisis right now. We have a looming recession, and the affordability issue is being described at the doors by all candidates because that's what everyone is hearing. Those were some of the warnings that I gave to council and to the community before I voted no for the almost 10% budget. And those things are even more real today. So again, with council support, I intend to reopen the budget, reevaluate what is in there, looking at it through an affordability lens, so savings can be passed on to the taxpayers.
Thank you. Danny, at budget review time, what would you hope to achieve and what would you be looking for?
What I would be looking for is to open up the myriad means of increasing our revenue or decreasing costs. For example, I've already mentioned a massive vacancy tax that will it could increase revenue, or at least it would increase our housing supply drastically and increase affordability for many people who need shelter. In addition to that, I intend to do targeted taxation on, for example, people who own more than one home. Like that would typically be, it's not going to necessarily hit your mom and pop landlord. It'll be taxing like REITs and developers who tend to own a vast quantity of properties. So already there, we have a little more money to work with. I would like to reduce police spending as it stands. I think it was 17% of the budget, at least last one, was spent on the police, and we absolutely do not need to keep spending more money on police. They're using it they're not using it to keep us safe for one. Like they're spending it on frivolous things such as illegal mass surveillance tools, or we're spending money on a new police station that happens to be costing us a pretty penny due to a lawsuit because of some mismanagement and budget overruns, time overruns. So, I would make sure things like that didn't happen, so we weren't just wasting money. Other ways we could increase revenue, a more targeted taxation, for example, like not just for vacancies for residences, but like we could have commercial spaces and institutional spaces that are being left vacant taxed as well at a massive rate. So that would also be another additional source of revenue. Like we don't necessarily have to make cuts. There's other ways of increasing affordability without cutting things, cutting services, and just tightening our belts, as it were. I think that should do.
Thank you. Moving on to another question. And Danny, we'll start with you. Curious what you believe the role of the municipality should be in addressing homelessness, mental health, and addictions in our community.
As to the greatest of our ability, we should have a direct role in this. It should be our responsibility. This is our community. These are the people that we live with. Mind you, we are limited in some ways due to provincial law, such as like if we were to put too much funding into programs such as this, we would lose certain elements of provincial funding. So our hands are a bit tied in that regard, but nonetheless, there are ways of indirectly addressing like poverty and such. Again, through reducing the cost of housing by, again, imposing a vacancy tax such that we free up our already existing stock of housing at cheaper rates. Because if people have to pay to hold on to these houses, then they're more likely to put them up for a little bit less. Mhm. Would you be able to repeat the question for me?
Of course, I'm curious what role you believe the municipality should play in addressing homelessness, mental health, and addictions in our community.
Yes. Well, I believe the poverty task force, mind you, great work, Cam. That is something that's important, but it has basically no meaningful power. I read an article from November 2020 where the poverty task force, all they could do was stand by and say, please don't, this is cruel and counterproductive. Well, encampment of 15 people was destroyed. All of their belongings, all of their shelter was destroyed. There was snow in the photo around the dumpster that they were throwing things into. This is not a way to address homelessness. This is not a way to address mental health. We should be taking the lead from other municipalities, such as the Region of Waterloo, who have in Kitchener, I believe, they've instated at least de facto, instated a permanent encampment for people who have no choice but to live rough. They're working on legalizing it properly, I believe, right now, but there are examples right on our doorstep of people doing things more effectively. And yes, the municipality has an important role to play in solving these crises.
Thank you. Cam, what role do you believe the municipality should play in addressing these challenges?
Well, we have a role to play, and it's too easy. And I said this a few years ago to just say, well, it's not our lane, it's not our jurisdiction, it's somebody else's problem. It's not. It is absolutely collectively our problem as well, and we need to step up. So in the last 4 years, we had the Mayor's Task Force on Homelessness, Poverty, and Addictions and Safety. Immediately, there was shelter beds created. There was the Welcoming Streets initiative that is helping out downtown. And there's the court support worker that was also hired for the last few years, and more. We've also now just recently, with the unanimous decision of council, created the Downtown Advisory Committee. And that's going to be starting in a little while to help those that are experiencing these issues within our downtown core. The other thing that to remember is that many of the people that are in homelessness, the next stage that they need help to get to is supportive housing in most cases. Before this term started, there was no supportive housing approved by council at all because no projects had come forward. I'm proud to say that we now have 3 supportive housing projects that have been approved unanimously by council. And that's the type of advocacy that we need to continue to do with the province to make sure, and the federal government, that funding for such housing can come down to help with homelessness in our community. The other thing that we need to look at doing as well is continuing to support from a financial point of view, funding that goes to these types of buildings so that we can help those that are most vulnerable. I think there's not a lot of daylight between Danny and myself on this issue because we both have a heart to try to help people as much as we can. We come at it from some different angles, but this is an all community approach, not just government, and we all have a role to play.
Thanks, Cam. You mentioned downtown, and that leads us to the next question.
Oh, okay.
A thriving downtown is crucial to the economic well-being of the entire city. How will you prioritize and ensure you create the conditions for a prosperous downtown core? And we start with you, Cam.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, yeah, so good segue then. Yeah, well, I just said just about a month or 2 ago, council approved unanimously the creation of the Downtown Strategic Advisory Committee. And I really believe that that is going to help out with a lens on the downtown, because it is a thriving public space area that we need to make sure that we make it thrive. It has to be it can't just be a place where we're just getting by. It needs to thrive, and it needs to thrive for everybody. That's visitors, tourism opportunities within our downtown, and the existing businesses that are there. We need to make sure that we have a welcoming and safe environment for all. One of the things I think we need to also do is look to program the downtown a little bit better. I think in partnership with the Downtown Guelph Business Association and tourism opportunities as an example, looking to expand the patio program, closing down streets, have programs of art and culture throughout the downtown to make it a draw is something that I think is something I'd like to really promote and push going into the next term if elected. And then we have the safety issue. There is some issues of safety and concern for not only residents of Guelph, but those that are visiting. And we need to address those issues as well, but in a very, a way of dignity. That's the word I'm looking for, dignity. For those that might be suffering from addictions, mental health, and other homelessness and poverty issues, we must always treat them with a sense of dignity and make sure that we treat them properly as we try to help them get to the places where they may need some help. And that's where the Welcoming Streets initiative that started this last term through the Mayor's Task Force has really seen some great results. I intend to try to make that a permanent piece for our city moving forward, so that we can help in regarding to the atmosphere and the arena of our downtown for all.
Thank you. Danny, how would you prioritize and ensure a prosperous downtown core?
Primarily from a higher level approach. I intend to implement the integrated community wealth model that has been successful in towns around the world. It puts a focus more on not just establishing, but sometimes converting already existing businesses to a worker cooperative model, which are shown to be not only oftentimes more profitable, but definitively more economically stable. They have a greater longevity, etc. And also there'd be a greater amount of workers would be able to earn more pay and thus be able to afford more. They'll be able to spend more money at businesses, for example, being able to actually afford, to go eat downtown. That's something that's far too much to cover in this short time we have here. So another thing I'd like to try to investigate is actually something that's been successfully implemented in other regions, like Durham, is interregional transit routes. If we were able to share, not just revenue, if we were able to let money and capital flow between the various small towns, townships, municipalities in the area, we not only have a much more vibrant culture, but we'd have a lot better we would have more to work with. There would be more business, there would be more commerce, etc. As regards safety, what we need to do is we don't need cops in the streets. We need to give these people houses. They have these people are subject to mental health issues because of material conditions. If you are stuck on the street, you're not going to be able to, get to a place where you're not needing this, like a substance, for example. We need to take a housing first approach. We need to greatly expand, for example, Wellington first audit, but then expand Wellington Social Services, the housing division specifically. We need to reduce cost of housing. We need to make rent geared to income housing. We need to make socialized housing if we're to improve the safety of downtown. These are human beings. They're not just a problem to be dealt with.
Thank you for your answer. We're going to move on to the next question. Business and residents want an accessible, responsive government. How would you improve the way the city engages with community members? Danny, we'll start with you.
Well, something I'd like to implement, because, almost no one's engaged in municipal politics, and they should be, because this is the place where people can enact the most change in this particular government system we have. So I would like to do away with, to as great a degree as possible. I'm not sure if it could be entirely done away with under provincial law, but closed council sessions. I would also like to have published regularly, weekly, a newsletter stated in clear and concise language, clearly understandable language, what has been debated, what has been discussed by council and all the various delegates, and this to be made very available to people, not necessarily by mail, that would get a little expensive and also not great for the environment with paper and stuff, but in one way or another to promote engagement of people to the government, and also increase our transparency so that not so much secretive activity, or even just perceived secretive activity, can take place.
Thank you. Cam, how would you improve the way the city engages with community members?
So I would probably divide it into two. So you have sort of what should the government do, and then what should politicians do, the elected officials do. So I think if I could say right off the top, we need a way better accessible website for the city of Guelph. I hear that it's not very easy to navigate, and I know that our staff are actually working on that, which is welcome news for many. And so I think from a touch point of government to the citizenry and to businesses, a way better, more accessible website would be a good start. I think I've actually done a better job in transparency and accessibility for people. As many people know, I do my little wrap-up videos after every single council meeting that tells the entire community what happened at the council meeting. I intend to continue to do those so more and more people are kept in the loop. And then it comes to engagement. Engagement, not just before decisions are made, where I think we can always hone ourselves to figure out better ways of making sure that we're doing engagement and to be accessible to people, but also to make sure that we're doing it after the fact as well. And I think if there's more weight to be put on one or the other, it's the before part. Too often, we hear people say, I didn't know that you were making that decision, or I didn't know that that's going to affect me in that way. And sometimes those decisions on whatever the issue is that we're talking about, they could have actually been talked about for a couple of years. And it's interesting to me to hear that, what do you mean you didn't know for a couple of years that this decision was coming up? So we can't dismiss those types of comments. I think we have to digest them very well and respond to them by making some changes to make sure that people are engaged and to make it much more accessible for people to interact with government and with the elected officials.
Thank you for your answer. This is our final formal question. And we'll start with you, Cam. What is your position on Bill 3, Strong Mayors Building Homes Act? Cam.
Yes, so I've actually been already public about this, and especially with my role as the Ontario Big City Mayors Caucus, I have a lot of concerns with it. And let me give you some real examples as to why I have some concerns with it, especially on the administration side of things. Having one person with that much power can actually put a chill on the whole organization from an administrative side of things that could actually become detrimental to how then services are provided to the very community that we're trying to serve. It would become almost like political appointments, and it would be the professionalism of public service for the administration side could really be put into jeopardy. Having a mayor have that much control over a CAO, as an example, or other department heads, I believe can be very detrimental to how things could run. And that's where that governance divide is actually very, very important. So from that perspective, I have some concerns with it. And so does the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Ontario Big City Mayors Caucus, the administrators of Ontario, from AMCTO is the acronym. And so what we've asked the government to do, because right now it's only Toronto and Ottawa that has this, that we have asked them formally, and I did this actually at the legislature for the committee at the province. We want to have much more consultation if it were ever to be offered outside of Toronto and Ottawa, because collectively, I think that there are some concerns for it. So that's my position as of right now. We just don't know a lot more about it because it was just for Ottawa and Toronto at this time. But I do have some concerns about it for sure.
Thank you. Danny, what's your position on Bill 3, Strong Mayors Building Homes Act?
I share a lot of Cam Guthrie's positions actually on that matter. I'd like to add, though, it effectively nullifies the point of, like, well, every other council member, if you have one person just able to say no to everything, having a veto one person having a veto power, it renders the rest of the government almost pointless unless they all have to agree. In that way, it makes local government a lot more ideological rather than democratic, because one person could just say, no, none to any of that, whatever one, or it could even just be, you could specifically say hate one counselor, and they can say, no, I'm not going to allow anything that counselor suggests to go through. It's foolishness. It's pretty much, well, in my opinion, just designed so that developers can help push through their projects. They'll have fewer hurdles. They won't have to go to the land use tribunal or any such things as that. Basically, yeah, I'm fully against Bill 3. And were I mayor, I'd be opposing it. Well, sadly, I wouldn't have the power of the strong mayor were I to oppose it, because I would veto it if I had the chance.
Thank you, Danny. This is now your opportunity to provide closing remarks. We'll hear remarks in the reverse order from the opening. So Cam, we'll start with you.
Great, thank you. I just want to start by thanking the chamber and you, Danny, for joining. I think it's great to have a discussion of ideas. No one person owns all the ideas in the community. So this is good discussion, and it was very respectful, which I love. So thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. There's much to be proud of in our community, but myself too, I'm frustrated with some things around affordability and making sure that safety and sustainability of our community continues into the future. I want everyone to know that I am very committed to affordability. I'm committed to safety, to more housing for our community. And I'm also committed to make sure that I work alongside the hospital for a new hospital that has been announced, along with the new long-term care beds that are going to be coming to our community. I also want to make sure that you know I'm committed to economic and cultural development. And finally, I'm committed to what matters, which is me listening to you to make sure that I'm informed before I vote for you at City Hall. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Danny?
Yeah, thank you as well for the opportunity. It's nice to be able to get my ideas out there. And thanks for showing up, Cam. I'm glad it wasn't just me. That would have been strange. Yeah, I'm committed to, well, reducing poverty in all of its aspects. I want to introduce democracy into every aspect of our lives. We effectively spend like an hour or two in a 4-year period enacting our democratic right. And that doesn't sound like democracy to me. I want it to be in our homes and our workplaces, so we're not subject to the tyranny of just a landlord or a bank or a boss. We need to have a say in every aspect of how our lives and our livelihoods operate. In every way, I intend to bring that about to the extent that I'm able as a mayor. I think that'll do. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thanks, Danny. And thank you both for joining us today and putting your name forward during this election. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. As a friendly reminder, Election Day is Monday, October 24th. And for information about all of the candidates and where to go to vote, please visit vote.guelph.ca.